Hello, students. This is a class for BA Part 2nd English Literature students, and we will be doing uh, the summary of the play today. Uh, in the Act First, Scene 1, we are presented with a meeting of three witches who are called Weird Sisters also. The story of this play opens in ancient Scotland. You have to remember that the backdrop of this play is Scotland, a nearby country to England, and it's a time of war. The scene brings thunder and lightning, and it is very near the battleground. Three witches meet on a lonely heath. Heath means forest. They talk to each other. They plan to meet again just before the sunset and to speak to Macbeth when he will be returning from the fighting. And then they vanish into the storm. Critics are divided in their opinion about this scene because, according to some commentators, this scene is un-Shakespearean. The scene is regarded as poor and pointless by some critics. However, some critics believe that it is a striking keynote of the whole play. The first appearance of these three witches actually prepares us for the atmosphere of fear and bloodshed which will prevail during the whole play. And the closing speech of the three witches, where they all speak together, is very significant and it is very popular in the world of literature. When the weird sisters or the three witches say, fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and fill the air. In other words, there are absolutely no moral distinctions for these witches because they are the personifications of evil. The fog and filthy air suit the witches the most. A reference to the central character, and Shakespeare has named his play after Macbeth, the central character. This name of Macbeth is also made in the opening scene. Thus, a relationship between the witches and the central character Macbeth is established at the very outset. Now we enter into scene second of act first, where King Duncan, King of Scotland, waits for the news of the battle, and a bleeding sergeant arrives to tell him of the bravery of his great general Macbeth. The king also hears of the treacherous behavior of one of his noblemen, the Thane of Cawdor. The king is greatly impressed by the bravery displayed by Macbeth on the battlefield. The sergeant describes Macbeth as valor's minion. The sergeant also pays a tribute to the bravery of Banquo, another commander who has been fighting side by side with Macbeth. And another nobleman, namely Ross and Angus, also arrive before the king. They also inform the king the victory of this battle in their favor because of the bravery of Macbeth, and they call Macbeth as Bellona's bridegroom. The king orders the immediate execution of the treacherous Thane of Cawdor and decides to confer the title of Thane of Cawdor upon Macbeth. So we come to know that Macbeth will be made Thane of Cawdor. We enter into scene third of Act First, and here we see the meeting of three witches once again. The three witches meet again together as it was already arranged by them. They talk to one another about what they have been doing. Their conversation shows that they are cruel and revengeful and with no mercy. One of them discloses the plan to torture a sailor whose wife has insulted her. And in this manner, we see they are very cruel. And then we see Macbeth and Banquo appear on the scene. They are on their way back from the battlefield. Macbeth's remark is an echo of something which the three witches has said. At the time of their first meeting, Macbeth's remark is, "So fair and foul a day I have not seen." So, this fair and foul, the play on the words fair and foul is echoing in our mind from the three witches. Banquo is the first to see the witches, but it is to Macbeth that the witches first speak. This is also very important to note. The first witch says, "Welcome, all hail, welcome." Hail means welcome. "All hail, Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis." The second which says, "All hail, Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor." And the third which says, "All hail, Macbeth, that shall be king hereafter." Macbeth feels too embarrassed and startled to answer, and it is the steady and honorable Banquo who inquires if the witches have anything more to say about the future. Thereupon the witches tell Banquo that though in one sense he is lesser than Macbeth, but in another sense he is greater than Macbeth because he will beget kings. And then suddenly they vanish, and Macbeth says that they have melted like human breath in the wind. And we are startled. Actually, Macbeth and Banquo are startled when they are greeted by Ross and Angus, and Ross informs Macbeth that King Duncan has conferred upon him the title of the Thane of Cawdor, and Thane of Cawdor is sentenced to death for his treachery. We can see that this information is actually a partial fulfillment of the prophecy of witches, and Macbeth is surprised, and in his aside means talking only to himself, talking only for the audience, imagines himself attaining the position of the King of Scotland also, but only through a horrible deed. However, Macbeth quickly dismisses this thought from his mind and in another aside says, "If chance will have me king, why chance me crown me without my stir?" Means he is not ready to take this violent action, and the violent action means killing the king and then becoming the king. So he wishes that if fate has made me Thane of Cawdor, fate can also make me king without my doing anything. And in this scene, we can see one thing, that witches are successful in instilling Macbeth the ambition to become a king by a partial fulfillment of the prophecy that Macbeth will become the Thane of Cawdor. It is fulfilled, and now the ambitious road to become the king of Scotland is open to Macbeth. And we see in the aside of Macbeth, when Macbeth speaks aside, we come to know that some evil is lurking in the mind of Macbeth, but he is not ready yet to commit the crime. we enter into scene 4 of Act First, where the king, uh, Duncan, declares his eldest son Malcolm, to be the heir to the throne. This announcement comes to Macbeth as a great blow, and in an aside, he expresses his apprehension that a hurdle has now been created in the way of his becoming the King of Scotland. Now, we start anticipating that Macbeth will do something to become the King of Scotland, and for this purpose, it is possible that he has to kill Duncan as well as Malcolm, the new heir to Scotland. We enter into scene 5 of Act First, where Lady Macbeth welcomes the letter sent by Macbeth. The place where Macbeth lives is Inverness. Now we are taken to Inverness, where Lady Macbeth is reading a letter written to her by her husband Macbeth after his meeting with the witches. As she reads the prophecies of the witches, her thoughts leap to the crown which she believes is waiting for her husband Macbeth. At the same time, she knows the difficulty in the way. She knows that her husband is too full of the milk of human kindness. Too full of milk of human kindness means he is very generous, he is very kind. She would like her husband to come back home soon so that she can whip him into action with the valor of her tongue. Her husband may be a valor's minion on the battlefield, but she believes that her valor of tongue will make the will of Macbeth strong so that he becomes the King of Scotland. A messenger arrives to inform her that the King of Scotland, Duncan, is coming to her castle that very night as a guest. Lady Macbeth treats this visit as a good opportunity for her husband so that the uh, husband Macbeth can kill Duncan. In a soliloquy, she calls upon the forces of evil to crush all feminine weaknesses in her and to fill her with the utmost cruelty so that she may not feel any urge to spare Duncan's life. When her husband arrives, she greets him with the words with which the three witches had greeted him. She then tells him to put on a deceptive expression on his face and to be ready to murder the royal guest that very night. Macbeth does not commit himself and says only this: "We will speak further." But Lady Macbeth seems determined. We will do this much only today, and rest of the plot will be revealed in the next lecture. Thank you very much.